I went to go see the big George Foreman movie and absolutely loved it. The way many people feel about Top Gun Maverick is how I feel about the big George Foreman movie. I thought it was fabulous. I thought what a tremendous, it's like I knew the George Foreman story, but I really didn't know it. And so I loved this movie for that. The guys that played George Foreman, I think there was three different, a kid, middle-aged guy, or young man, and then the older George Foreman. I thought they did a terrific job. Don't know any of their names. I thought the other thing, other than loving the movie, my other thing that I have to say, Steve, is George Foreman's first wife is the most beautiful woman I think I've ever seen. The actress that played his first wife and so I went down a rabbit hole. As soon as the movie was over, I got home and hopped on my laptop and went down a rabbit hole trying to figure out who this is. Just spectacular, but love this movie. Recommend it to everybody.
Wow, so Tamron Hall, move over Bacon, make way for something younger and leaner. I get you,
she's
Sizzling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As much as I hated Creed 3, I feel the opposite about the Foreman movie. And I was not necessarily a George Foreman fan, or even, I really didn't like him as an announcer on HBO. I thought they did a hell of a job. I get it. Some of this stuff you have to divorce from reality. It's Hollywood. But the attention to detail in terms of the sweats that he wore, the hats that he wore. Tell you what was really impressive. And one thing, again, I'm a boxing purist in a lot of ways. I cannot help that. And the great thing is I'm never going to change. The fight scenes for the Thriller in Manila and the other ones I thought were really well done. In fact, the way the original first version of George Foreman threw punches, they did a great job because he had his own unique technique where he would club guys to death. Right. He was not exactly Larry Holmes or Muhammad Ali in terms of shooting out quick punches, but those big ham hocks, the way he would pull back on his punches, and then the way he evolved as a fighter, much more fuel efficient by the time he fought Michael Moore. I thought, wow, they really did a good job. Even the ring attire, they got it right. My only quibble about this movie, and you can call it minor or major, I think they did not even mention a gentleman by the name of Bill Kaplan, who really, Jason, is one of the 5 most important people in George Foreman's life and career. And I'll tell you why. Bill Kaplan, old-time publicist, I've known him for years. He actually he's an old-school press agent or a publicist. And when George Foreman was a young amateur in his 6th fight, Bill Kaplan happened to be the ring announcer, played many roles in boxing at the Oakland Municipal Auditorium. George Foreman lost an early amateur bout. So during the intermission, Bill Kaplan had to do other things, and he sees a young George Foreman with his head down on his chest like this, and this is in books. And he said, "Hey, George, don't worry about it. You're a good young fighter. Keep at it. Don't give up." George Foreman actually wrote, "I was about to quit boxing till that man came up to me and said, 'Hey, you can do this.'" And he became his publicist. And he was with them throughout his whole career. Great story. So you go to Zaire. He loses that fight. Everyone gets out of the locker room. Like, they got the hell out of there. One man remained in the locker room the whole time. It was Bill Kaplan. So when the media came in, this is also in books, George Foreman said to the media, "Before any questions are asked, I want to say one thing. I found my one true friend. That man right there, Bill Kaplan. That's what I want to say before." And Bill Kaplan said he nearly fainted. So fast forward to 1986, as George Foreman is secretly working out. Bill Kaplan finds out about it, and him and his daughter, Debbie, also worked a long time in boxing. They, without warning, visit George Foreman, and they go to Houston, and there's a driving up. Foreman sees them on the porch, and they get out of the car, and they walk up, and George Foreman goes, "What took you so long?" He was waiting for him. And Bill Kaplan actually had to deliver the presentations to the California State Athletic Commission before his first fight because they would not license him. Because if you notice that fight against Steve Zowski was at the Arco Arena, which they did another good job of, the commission actually had to get medical reports, they had to get presentations, and they had to have him go through a battery of tests. And it was Bill Kaplan throughout that whole time was with them. So that's the only quibble that I have. But other than that, the thing I liked about it is that it was actually an uplifting story. They didn't make it negative. We all knew what happened in that time, but they presented a great American character as a great American success story.
That's interesting about Bill Kaplan because that that relationship could have
Yeah,
been the center of the movie,
yeah,
and that may be why they avoided it because and I had no problem. And again, a lot of times I have problems with this whole matriarchal thing, but they made it about George and his mom more
yeah,
than anybody else. She would have to be seen as the co-star, and then maybe his second wife as
yeah.
as the other, perhaps co-star. But maybe they didn't want to do the Kaplan thing. Well, they showed who is the story about the guy screwing up his money. Is that true?
That is true. I don't know how close they were, but I've seen other documentaries where they mentioned someone took his money. I'm glad that they also really gave a big role to Doc Broadus. That's a man who gave his life to boxing.
Yes.
Doc Broadus, I remember I never really got to meet him. I talked to him one time, but when I first got into the beat in the late '90s, he always found looked like a very distinguished man. He was always dressed well, and he would always be given a ticket or a pass to the fight by the promoters. He was an exalted figure, and when he walked in, people treated him with respect. And I thought that was I'm glad they got Archie Moore because Archie Moore taught him a lot of the finer points of boxing. I think they got that one pretty good. The only fight that I wish they would have at least devoted a minute to, and I sent it to you, his fight with Ron Lyle. Jason, that may be the greatest heavyweight slugfest ever. It only went 5 or 6 rounds, and there was like 6 or 7 knockdowns. I've never seen heavyweights hit each other that many times, knock each other off their feet, be out on their feet, and then George Foreman somehow found a way to overcome one of the hardest hitting heavyweights of all time. I mean, he's an amazing fighter. As I start doing a deep dive into Foreman, when you start doing all-time heavyweight lists, it's Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes. I think George Foreman has to be up there. The guy won the heavyweight title 20 years apart. That'll never be done again.
And the thing that I thought they did a good job with, because my memory was fuzzy, but like Michael Moore was a real fighter.
Yes.
And he didn't knock out some tomato can to get that second belt. Michael Moore was a real deal, and I liked that.
Michael Moore was a hard-hitting southpaw, originally from Monessen, Pennsylvania, was a protege of Emmanuel Stewart originally, and went to the famous Kronk. And what happened is that Moore won the title in a really close fight against Evander Holyfield. So that's a legitimate win.